and decisions are what shape our society. And what we have right now is what we have given, for it's only a mirror of who we are. Sadly, the reflection isn't pretty. Staring back at us from the mirror is a broken world of social injustice, discrimination, and prejudices, especially against people with disabilities. Championing the course to heal this split is a network for the advancement of people with visible disabilities, NAPVID. We have decided to be a voice you too can. Join Hitches and Voices every Friday at 2 p.m. on Independent Radio 92.3. Hitches and Voices, spot the hitch, be a voice.
Dearest gentle listeners, welcome to Hitches and Voices. My name is Barbara and I'm your host for today. And joining me in the studio is the one and only Mr. Kingsley and the beautiful Siri. Just to remind you, this program is brought to you by the Network for the Advancement of People with Visible Disabilities, NAPVID. NAPVID is an organization that is advancing the rights of persons with disabilities with the vision of a society where everyone can thrive. Well, today is another day to talk disability issues, and today we'll be talking about gender-based violence and how it affects persons with disabilities. So, before we begin, I would like to ask Mr. Kingsley, so can you tell us about gender-based violence?
I don't know, it's gender-based violence, but I don't know why I have it in my head.
It's
A woman should be in the best position to talk more about this. But even though, violence has no gender inclination, it happens to be both male and female. We know that there are women who assault and violate their male gender, but the argument is that women suffer the most from gender-based violence. Women and children suffer the most. So I think Siri will be in a better position, to talk more about this than myself.
Oh, okay.
Well, I totally agree with Kingsley. When you
You
hear
got
that,
personal experience in case you've had one.
of course, I totally agree because when you hear gender, the first thing that comes to your mind is women.
Yeah.
But now, men are also being are also survivors of gender-based violence. Just that because we're in Nigeria and we're in Africa, it must not be heard or it must not be seen that a man comes out to say, "Oh, I'm being violated." Okay, so
As a result of that, men are quiet about it.
men are quiet about it, but I've
and
seen
women
quite
are
a few.
loud about their own, as usual.
No, I think it's just the cultural setting of Nigeria. But I have seen quite a few because I've worked in that thematic area.
No, you can't even say now that it's few. What you are saying is that men suffer it, but they don't come out
They don't come out to speak Like I
because
said,
of cultural stigma and all that. So they might just keep quiet about it. So the stats we have that shows that women are more susceptible to gender violence because they speak out the most.
not because they speak out. It is actually true. It is actually true.
Well, speaking from the cultural perspective, I think there was a story in my community where a man had to report to. There's something we call Umuada. It's like the women group.
Okay.
He had to report to the Umuada that he was being beaten by his wife.
Wow.
Yeah, it was that serious, and a lot of men were making fun of him for reporting, but it was good he did because the Umuada now had to the wife in check. I think they fined her and did a whole lot. So all we are saying is gender-based violence goes two ways, right? But probably men don't really talk about it the way that men do. But I still agree that based on statistics, I think women and children are more susceptible to gender-based violence than men are.
Yeah, because the emphasis is more particularly physical violence and sexual violence. But there's emotional assault on men. Women have a way of blackmailing you emotionally. I don't know if that is categorized under gender-based violence. Because if it is, then men has a lot to say in that regard. But in any case, speaking as one with a disability, what saddens me is that when people talk about gender-based violence, they oftentimes exclude persons with disability. And if you look at gender-based violence, it's a broad term it covers persons with disability as well, because at the end of the day, just like we spoke about the men, persons with disability most times cannot even come out to express any kind of violence they are going through. For instance, someone with a hearing impairment is going through some sort of assault or the other. The issue of language barrier, how is he going to even communicate what is happening to him? Even if there's a center, is a center accessible to him? Someone with visual impairment, someone on a wheelchair, if that person thinks of the hazard of finding his or her way to even go to a place where he or she can make that complaint, that just discourage the person. And you were sharing an experience with me in the vehicle while we were on our way to this place.
Yes, I
Of
was.
a physically challenged woman who
Was sexually assaulted.
was sexually assaulted, and she went to report it, and the persons there were like, why you even they report sexual assault? Even happy say this is a person who even marry you,
Imagine.
they complain. You can imagine how society, often time, shun or shout down
At
persons,
survivors.
persons with disability who suffer gender-based violence. But in any way, to better drive home our point, for those who love storytelling, those who like to understand issues from a storytelling perspective, Barbara did a beautiful job for us
Beautiful job.
by painting a picture of a woman and a child with disability, meaning a woman who gave birth to a child with a disability. That's double tragedy. Being a woman is enough problem. You
And
now
you now
give
have
birth
to add to that.
to a child with disability. That's double wahala. Oftentimes when that happens, the men usually walk away and leave the children for the women. But some persons with disability even suffer more double tragedy,
Yeah.
because if you are not lucky, both your father and your mother will just abandon you, and you are just left on your own. But you have situations where they are oftentimes left with their mothers to take care of them alone. So let's pen this picture. Let's tell the story. I'll be back in the studio to talk some more.
It was her grandmother who chose to call her Obene. As for her father, he argued that the child could not have been sent by God, but Mama wouldn't give up. In her words, even dogs have names, so the child must be named. Rumor has it that her mother, Tura, had tried to escape from the hospital, leaving the child behind. She would rather be childless than to have an incomplete child. Her father, Elijah, had suggested tell people that the baby was stillborn, but it was too late. Mama had announced to everyone that her grandchild was coming home. When Tura finally returned from the hospital, she wrapped the baby with thick clothing and insisted that no one was to carry her, lest they see the horror of her legs. But it wasn't long before everyone realized that the child was crippled, and that was the beginning of her woes. Obene grew up in a world of her own, shielded from the outside world. But even in her seclusion, her beauty shone like a diamond. Her dark skin glowed, while her hazel eyes sparkled brightly. When she smiled, her face revealed the charming dimple on her left cheek and a bright set of teeth that added to her alluring smile. She would often sit by the open door of her mother's room, which led to the living room. From there, she would watch the television as she was allowed to be in the living room. Evening, when Obene was 12, Elijah staggered into the house, his clothes torn at the shoulder, as though he had been in a fight. From where she sat, Obene could perceive the smell of alcohol in his breath. He took one look at her and roared, "Tura!" At that moment, Obene knew there was trouble. Tura rushed into the living room, trembling, and before she could speak, he sent a slap across her face. She staggered and fell, hitting her head on the flower vase. As she tried to get up, Elijah thundered, "Where did you get this creature from?" Pointing at Obene. The woman whimpered and tried to crawl away, but he dragged her by the hair, attempting to pull her across the room. In that moment,
Obene picked up her mother's shoe from the rack next to her and flung it at her father with all her might. The shoe barely scratched his thigh. His eyes widened with surprise. It was the first time she stood up to him. He suddenly dropped Tura and walked towards Obene, picking her up from the floor. His face was the last thing she saw, and then there was darkness. She woke up in a hospital with Mama next to her. She tried to speak, but was choked by the tears. That evening, when she got home, Elijah said to her, I have spoken to Ogalaito, and he has agreed to take you as his sixth wife. I cannot continue to have you in my house. In that moment, Obene crawled towards him, holding him by the legs and pleading, Daddy, please, I'm sorry. I don't want to get married. Please send me to Mama instead. But Elijah's mind was made up. He took one look at Obene and said, You mean tell me that a full-grown man found you worthy to be his wife, in this your condition, and you are crying? You should be thanking me, you ungrateful rat. How many crippled girls do you know that are married? All this while, Sarah stood by the door, watching, but never said a word. The night before Obene was to be married, she said to Mama, Would he beat me the way Papa always beats my mother? But Mama couldn't speak. Instead, she hugged her tightly and they both cried. In between sobs, Obene said, Please save me. But it was too late. At her new home, Obene was battered regularly by Lito, but there was no one to save her. Soon, she became pregnant, and on the day she put to bed, Lito said to her, We better not return to this house with a deformed child. Obene sent for Mama, who came and was with her through 8 hours of labor. After much complications, the baby was born. She was exhausted. Her once bright eyes now turned pale. When Mama brought the baby to her, she asked with tears in her eyes, A girl? No, Mama replied, a boy. Obene smiled wearily and said, Thank God. Then she looked at Mama and said, Thank you. She slowly laid her head back on the bed. Mama let her rest a while, and after some time, she called out softly, Obene, bring the baby closer. But Obene did not respond. Mama reached out and touched her, but her hands were cold. Obene was gone. Her life snatched away before it began. And all Mama could say was, They have killed my child. This is the story of Obene. Obene was a woman. Obene was human.
Whoa.
What do I say? Organe was a woman. Organe was human.
Human.
I think we should be contemplating giving Barbara a Nobel Prize for
We should.
storytelling. I think there's something about people from Anambra State
Oh wow.
and storytelling. Chimamanda, Barbara. Are you guys from the same town?
No,
She's from what town now?
I can't remember.
But she's from your state in any
Yes,
case.
she is.
Okay. Shout out to our Anambra people, by the way. What more can I say? I mean, being a woman is difficult enough. Being a woman with disability is even a double tragedy. And while we were coming, I asked the question. I was like, if a woman suffers violence of any sort, particularly a woman with a disability, what would you think is the basis for that violation? Is it because she's a woman, or is it because she's a woman with a disability? So I can't remember what you said, but you said what did you tell me in the car while we were coming?
Okay, I thought it's both, but first because she's a woman. Yeah.
Mm.
It first starts with being a woman, and then when you're a woman with disability, it's just double problem because for you, just if it's just a woman, I think you have a higher tendency of defending yourself. But when you're a woman with disability, there are more limitations to being able to come out of that situation. And like you said, let's say it's someone that has hearing impairment. How do you even communicate your predicament? So that these are the issues. So being a woman has it comes with its own problems, and then being a woman with disability is just a whole lot.
It's a whole lot, and they are also being subject to a whole lot of things. A whole lot of things, victim blaming, like I said, victim blaming. Where which we talked about the lady, the physically challenged lady that was assaulted, and they were like, you
If you
are
would
you
have
never
been
want to appease a person they touch you. So aside that, big blaming, socially ostracized, like what is there? It is nothing. Are you the first? A whole lot of things, a lot of impact, risks
No, but I
to
think that happens to
poverty.
I think that happens to women generally. I don't know
It
if it
does.
boils down to persons with disability only. I've heard cases of where girls go to police station to report sexual assault, for instance. Uh, and some security agencies are like, you should say not be waiting you wear so make them they harass you,
exactly.
or you should say people
Or why
want.
you even go there for the first place?
uh The reason why ladies are shy, for example, to report rape cases is because the trusted men went to visit the guy at at his place, and at the end of the day, he is that she's sexually assaulted, and she can't say it because
Yes.
people will be like, "What did you go do for there?"
Victim blaming.
Victim blaming, and at the end of the day, rather than facing the issue, we
You're
are
being
we are taunting the
ostracized.
victim. Yeah.
Yes.
So, but another challenge is that when people record gender-based violence, they oftentimes don't see it from a disability perspective. So if you are looking for stats that shows the percentage of persons with disability who have suffered gender-based violence, you probably won't find it.
True.
True.
Whether starts from the national level or the subnational level, you won't find it because they really don't think it's a disability thing. If it's women and children, some people would not even want to phantom the idea that children who go through early marriages, that they would even be a child with a disability who will be given out for early marriage, and it happens.
It
But
does.
yeah, people would not, because of cultural issues. Well, which person go on marry? We never even marry people.
Yeah,
So
people wait
yeah,
for
you understand. So, and these are just based off ignorance because people
Yes.
really don't know. So I wish start agencies could do more, and this just boils down to a lot of advocacy and awareness creation, so that we can properly tackle this issue. We know how to address it when it comes from a disability perspective. I think that explains why NAVID, in stepping up our advocacy and awareness creation, took this issue of gender-based violence, and particularly as it affects persons with disability, to the Ministry of
Women and gender issues.
Women and Gender Issues, and started a conversation with that ministry. And by God's grace, we are forging a partnership that will help reduce the issue of gender-based violence, particularly against persons with disability. Let's take excerpt from that visit, and we'll be back.
A recent focus as an NGO is seeing how to ensure that persons with disability, girls and women with disabilities, are protected from sexual and gender-based violence.
Management team, we will continue to go the extra mile. I remember this, and I was fascinated, and I think he made a true word from law school. So when I see people who, despite their limitations, they wake up every morning to face the harsh realities of this world, it only means that those in government must provide an enabling environment for you to thrive more. And by the special grace of God, the peers and my directors will go the extra mile to make sure all these requests are not only captured in the imagination of His Excellency Governor Monday, we will ensure that what you want is carried out, and we will not delay.
Yes, that was the voice of the Honorable Commissioner, Ministry of Women and Gender Issues. So we are forming a formidable force to tackle gender-based violence amongst women and children, most particularly persons with disability. So it's a good fight. So I want to say that if you know somebody or you survivor or you even perceive that someone might be experiencing any sort of assault, I think you should report, because when you know these things and you don't see anything, you're also at fault.
Aiding and abetting.
Thank you very much. So we'll get you down on a
Okay, let
lighter
me say
mode.
something. When you said something about statistics, that most people do not think that certain persons experience gender-based violence and is connected to their disability. What people do not understand is that sometimes disability has this tendency of creating a certain form of dependence, although it doesn't apply to everybody. So that's why sometimes you see persons with disabilities being assaulted by their caregivers.
Mm.
Now, because they're in that vulnerable position where they need someone who can help them, anything can go wrong. And which means that if this person did not have this disability, there is every tendency that they would not have experienced such. So it is quite, I think it's quite necessary for us to understand that some of these issues are connected to disability.
I think that's why most disability organizations are opposed to the institutionalization of persons with disability. What that means is that creating a center where you house persons with disability and cater for them.
Yeah,
Their argument is that it brings all sort of abuses from the caregivers,
it does.
and it makes persons with disability looks like animals kept in a zoo. So you don't have to create a particular center where you house them. But that's an argument for another day. Maybe we do need such system, but we need to properly define how those systems should be structured. But the summary of it is that we need to create an environment where persons feel safe. Persons don't have to bother or disturb themselves over any form of violence, regardless of their gender or their disability.
That is true.
So oftentimes Obena's story is just one of the least out of most of the gender-based violence. I mean, it's just one. We have female genital mutilation, early child marriage, sex trafficking, femicide, and a whole lot of things. And aside this, we do not even understand the impact of these things. There are devastating consequences. Many experience severe physical injuries, unwanted pregnancies, exposure to HIV, other sexually transmitted infections, self-harm, depression, anxiety, and even post-traumatic stress disorder, just to mention a few. So it is just beyond child marriage. It's a whole lot. It affects the whole being. Oh my God, I'm being emotional because but it's actually deep, very, very deep, very, very deep. So we just need to join hands to create more awareness. That's why we're doing this. We come here every day to create awareness. So please, once more, I would say let's stop the victim blaming. Right?
A lot of people don't even believe that depression is real.
They don't.
They
That's
feel
another
like it's a
thing.
tale. Yeah, like well, why would you be depressed?
And only you don't happen to be.
They'll tell you, we already go through our various problems now. So
That
you
carry
feel
on
because
first.
you are depressed, the next person
shouldn't
shouldn't be.
be.
I mean, people absorb issues differently, and
Exactly.
people have their various ways they battle with their own depression. But, anyways, I think it's a wrap for today. Wish we had more time, but I think it's a conversation we need to continue some other
Interesting
time.
one.
But thanks for journeying with us on this ride of Hitches and Voices. Don't forget,
Voices.
this program comes to you every Friday after the news by 2. And this program is coming to you courtesy of Network for the Advancement of People with Visible Disability.
And if you love what we do and you want to partner or sponsor, you can contact us at 34 Arosa Street off Sokmumba Road, Benin City. You can follow us on all our social media platforms: Instagram official underscore Nabvid, Facebook Nabvid, X at Nabvid Nigeria. You can also look us out at www.nabvid.org. You can also call us on this number 091 360 73671.
Please go to our YouTube channel, Napvid, subscribe,
Yes.
see most of our content, very beautiful content,
And engage.
and engage us. Yeah, that's it. Till we do this again, same time next week. Spot the H.
Be a
Be a
voice.
Goodbye.
If our world is what we make of it, then we know that our choices and decisions are what shape our society. And what we have right now is what we have given, for it's only a mirror of who we are. Sadly, the reflection isn't pretty. Staring back at us from the mirror is a broken world of social injustice, discrimination, and prejudices, especially against people with disabilities. Championing the course to heal this split is a network for the advancement of people with visible disabilities, NAPVID. We have decided to be a voice. You too can. Join me, Hitches and Voices, every Friday at 2 p.m. on Independent Radio 92.3. Hitches and Voices. Spot the hitch. Be a voice.